Hey now folks, my name is Nick, and today we're taking a look at A Study in Emerald from Martin Wallace and his own company, Tree Frog Games. Now, Martin Wallace has definitely become a designer of no small renown amongst the hardcore modern gaming community. He's done a lot of games. He's done some very high-ranking games. If you look at games like Brass, especially, I think was in the top 10 on the Board Game Geek rankings until just not too long ago. And Brass and a lot of other games that he's done are more of a historical context to them, not necessarily true history, but just like more realistic. They have to do with a lot of them have to do with trains, like steam and age of steam. A Few Acres of Snow has to do with the British and French war back in either the 1600s or 1700s. So this heavier games, definitely, with more of a realistic historical context to them. This game, A Study in Emerald, along with a few of the games that he's done for the, including like Moon God Invaders and the Terry Pratchett games that he's done, The Witches and Ankh-Morpork, these games sort of go out of his wheelhouse a bit and have more of a fantasy science fiction setting. Now, A Study in Emerald is actually another Cthulhu game, but one with a very unique twist to it. It's actually based off of a Neil Gaiman short story, and I'm a very big fan of Neil Gaiman and a lot of his different writings. But basically, this game posits, it takes place in sort of, I can't remember if it's a 1700s or 1800s Europe that has basically already been taken over by the ancient old elder gods. We've already lost. It's already a done deal for hundreds of years now. They sort of rule over us, but we're allowed to continue eking out an existence. And in this world, there's actually two different factions warring for supremacy. There are the Loyalists, who are those who are loyal to the elder gods and want to keep them in power, and they're actually led by Moriarty. And there are the Restorationists who want to fight back against the old ones and overthrow them from power, and they are led by Sherlock Holmes. And this is actually this is a team game, but a unique team game. It's better if I just show you, because there's a lot going on in this game, and then we'll come back, and I have a lot of thoughts about this game. A lot. Okay, there is a lot going on in A Study in Emerald, and there's no way I can go over every single detail of the game, and I'll probably get a couple things slightly wrong, so just bear with me. Do not use this as a comprehensive rules explanation of the game. Instead, this is just an overview to give you a flavor of what the game is, to see if it's something that you might like. So, the theme of the game is that you're either playing a Restorationist or a Loyalist who is trying to either protect or destroy the ancient evil royalty gods that have taken control of the world back in like the 1800s. How you determine what team you're on is determined by these cards, which are dealt out at the beginning of the game. You have both Restorationist and Loyalist cards. Each player is going to get one of these, and you'll keep it secret into yourself. You may only reveal it when certain conditions are met during the course of the game. Each player is going to choose a particular color, and they're going to get an agent piece in their color. So this is for the blue player. That's Agent Thursday. You'll get a bunch of cubes in your color, which are influence cubes. You'll have these little control discs, and control discs are used for a number of different things, including you'll put a disc on the victory point track. Once you gain victory points, you become known to the authorities, and you'll put one of these little discs out here on the board. And also, you'll put your disc, if you ever take control of cities, which I'll get to in a moment, you'll put your disc out on the board in that particular space, which also gets you victory points as well. Now, each player starts with a hand of cards, which are all basically the same. I think there might be a little bit different, but they're basically your basic starting cards, because this is essentially a deck building game. And then play will begin. Now, the goal of the game is to have the most victory points. This is a competitive game, so have more victory points than any of the other players. However, this is kind of sort of a team game as well. So once you've determined what team that you're on, at the end of the game, you only win the game if one of the players that's on your particular side is not the lowest scoring player in the game. If whatever side has the lowest scoring player in the game automatically loses. There's no way for a player on that team to win. But if at least all of your other teammates are not in last place and you have the most points, you will win the game. It's kind of a tricky concept to wrap your head around, but that's the basic gist of it. So how this will work is on your turn, you'll draw 5 cards from your starting deck, and then you basically, this is all card driven, and you have several different actions that you can do, but it's all determined by the cards that you play. And you're going to play cards for one of the particular items that's on the card. So for instance, let's look at this card here. You have a picture of a cube and you have a coin, and there's really no other text on the card. So what I can choose to do is play these for the cube symbol, and I'll play however many cards I have in my hand. In this case, I have 3 different cards, and I can play these for the cube symbol in order to place influence cubes out on the board. Now, you start the game with 6 of these influence cubes available to you. You have the rest that are in your stock that aren't quite available to you yet. And what you can choose to do is play these cards for the cubes and then put as many cubes as you want. You can't overspend in this game, but if you play for 3 cubes, and you don't have to, you'll put 3 cubes out on any place on the board that you're trying to take control of. And what that means is, like, there are these cards sprinkled throughout the board. Each of these stacks has 4 cards with the top one flipped over. They all have different special abilities. And I'll say, okay, I want to get the Emma Goldman agent card, so I'll put all of my influence cubes there. I could instead choose to put it down in the city box here for Madrid, because I want to take control of that. Or off to the side over there are permanent effects cards. Permanent effects cards, once you buy them, they stay in front of you and offer you a powerful effect, and you'll just literally put your cubes there. Now, you have to put all those cubes that you used on one spot. You can't split them up. And you're not allowed to actually take that card until the start of your next turn. On your turn, you have 2 actions to do, and if you want to claim a card, your very first action of the turn must be to claim that card. So in the case of the cards that are on the board, you'll actually take, or the city card, you'll take the card and put it into your deck. Now, if it's an agent, you're actually going to pull the agent token from the stack of tokens off to the side, the one that corresponds. And in fact, during setup, you might just go ahead and put them out there as soon as the cards are revealed. And that actually gives you a agent. They go into that city, put your control disc on them. That gives you another agent that you can actually move around the board in addition to your main agent. And of course, now you have a card in your deck, because this is a deck building game, that gives you more special abilities. So let's say I take the Emma Goldman card, then I'll immediately flip over this, and look, I've got another card. Now, if you take a permanent effect card, like I said, it goes in front of you, and they all do drastic things. So Watson makes your hand limit actually go up to 6, which is good. Your normal hand limit is 5, which you draw back up to at the end of your turn. The Migo, actually, as an action, you can place this card encounter for an agent on this card. While he or she cannot be assassinated, you can return the agent to play on another turn. So now there's another symbol on this card, this little green symbol here, and also on some of the other cards out here on the board, like the Shogoth card. And the Zombies card. When you purchase a card that has that green symbol, you must immediately draw one of these sanity counters that look like this. There are mad counters and sane counters. Now, if you draw a sane counter, no problem, you're fine. But if you draw a mad counter, if you have a total of 3 mad counters in front of you, you go insane. If you're a loyalist player, this does nothing to you, because you're loyal to the Elder Gods, and you kind of want to go insane after all. But you do have to reveal your card. But if you're a Restorationist player, not only do you reveal your card, but it triggers the end of the game. The end game is also triggered when you reach certain point level, dependent on the number of players. The first person to get there in actual points will trigger the end of the game. There's other end game conditions, like if too many of these zombie tokens come out on the board from a certain zombie card, the game can immediately end and that player gets bonus points. If a Restorationist player's main agent is killed and that's the only agent they have on the board, there's a lot of ways for the game to come to an end. If one of these 2 tracks over here on the side goes all the way up to the top, this is the Restoration track, this is the War track, there are little bonus point markers there. At the end of the game, which could be triggered by one of those markers going all the way to the top, whoever's on that particular side gets that many bonus points. Every player who's on that side will. Now, if one of these stacks of cards run out, and that war track will immediately go up by 2, and then another permanent effect card comes into play over there. So it actually behooves Restorationist players to not let the cards run out before the game can end. So I know I'm kind of going all over the place here, but there's a lot to this game. So a lot of this is deck building. You'll buy these cards, and then you'll get to use them. But that I just described how to put cubes out on the board. Now, once you claim a card, your cubes go into limbo. You could instead use the cubes on your card to take those cubes back from limbo and put them back into your available stock, or just remove them from any other card out there that you don't want them on anymore because you decided you don't want it anymore, and just put it back into your own personal stock. Now, another thing you could do is there are coins on these cards. For every 2 coins you spend on these cards, remember, you're only choosing one of these actions. You have to choose one particular action. You can't use it for both coins and cubes. But if for every 2 coins you spend, you get to buy a cube from your non-available supply and put it into your available supply. You could also use the coin symbol to travel around the board. Now, out here on the board, there's these little lines with little numbers on them. If you spend that many coins, you can move an agent from one area to another. And again, you cannot overspend, but you could move more than one space if you have that much money. Now, there are also bomb symbols on some of the cards because in this game, you can assassinate people. You can assassinate either royalty, which are the ancient old ones that live in each city, or you can try to assassinate other agents. In order to do so, you have to have a card that actually lets you assassinate people. So everyone, I believe, or maybe just a blue player, but I think everyone actually starts off with one of these. So here it says, once one use action, assassinate royalty or an agent. Now, again, you can only use a card for one thing. So if you're using it for the text box down here, you cannot actually use it for these bombs. But use this card with your agent in a particular city of the royalty that you want to assassinate. You'll play this. You'll play a number of other cards with bombs, and you have to actually meet the number that's out here on the board. If you're trying to assassinate another person's agent, let's say it's out here on the board, you have to meet the number that's in the actual city square here. If you can play at least that many bombs, you actually assassinate the agent. Now, that could trigger the end game if you assassinate a Restorationist main agent. Loyalist players actually get bonus points at the end of the game for killing Restorationist agents. And if you manage to kill royalty, you're going to put one of your control discs up here. Now, if you are actually a Restorationist player, then you'll get the points here right away. And if you're at a Restorationist player at the end, you get to keep those points. If it turns out you're a Loyalist player, then you'll lose those points at the end because you're killing your bosses, essentially, which is really the American dream, according to Homer Simpson. But in any case, that's assassinating people. It could be a beneficial thing to do. Now, the cards that you actually get out on the board. In my earlier example, I took the Emma Goldman card. Now, these work the same as the cards in your main deck. You can choose to use them as a cube. Some of them, of the agents, are actually worth victory points for the Restorationist players at the end of the game. Now, actually, that might be for both. I'm not entirely sure on that, so don't quote me on that. It could be for Loyalists or Restorationists, but it hasn't really come up. Now, if you choose to use it for this arrow, this corresponds to the track over here, which means that if you choose to play it for this instead of the cube, you can move the Restoration track up too. If you have multiple cards with this symbol, and as you can see, many of the city cards you take have those symbols as well for both War and Restoration, you can play multiples of them at the same time in order to move the track up or down. Now, the city cards are very interesting because you can take those cards, just like I said, you can put them in your influence cubes in the city box and take control of that city and take the corresponding city card into your deck. But there's nothing to, and get the points and put your control disc there. But there's nothing to stop another player from coming along and putting their influence cubes down there and wresting control from you. And when that happens, not only do you lose the points and they gain the points, they'll take the city card out of your deck and then it's available for them to use. And this is basically the core of the game. You're going to keep putting influence out, taking cards into your deck, trying to take permanent effect cards if they're useful for you. There's even one permanent effect card that will make you change sides from Loyalist to Restorationist or vice versa. Some other cards in the game, like the Necronomicon, will actually give you bonus points, but you're stuck with it in your deck and you could go mad from drawing it. There's lots of other little things, like there's double agent token. Each player starts the game with double agent tokens, and the double agent tokens actually correspond to different agents that you could buy on the cards out there. If someone else has control of an agent because they bought the card and they have the token and they have their control disc on it, on your turn you can spend an action to flip over the corresponding token and take control of that character for yourself. But you have to have the right double agent token. Now, there are certain cards that will let people hide royalty. If you play a card that lets you hide royalty, you can put sort of a safe token out on one of these spots, which will prevent that royalty from ever being assassinated, and you'll actually get bonus points if you're actually a loyalist player at the end of the game. If you're not, you don't get those points. Oh man, I'm just trying to keep track of what else is in here. I mean, there's so many cards that do different things. There's a vampire card that will let you transform your agents into vampires by flipping them over like this, and also possibly turn other people's agents into vampires and therefore take control of them. And if you're a loyalist player, that's bonus points at the end of the game, and also those agents become indestructible. I mentioned the zombies earlier. If you play the zombie cards, you can put these zombie tokens out. And if you play the zombie card when every zombie's already on the board, the game immediately ends, and that player gets, loyalist player gets 8 extra points. There's just so much to do in this game. Different cards with different effects. The Hired Assassin card is a card that lets you essentially get an assassinate without having to use your main card. There's useful cards like the Acrona card, which is an action that lets you remove any 2 influence cubes from the board and place them in limbo. There's cards like the Freemason card that's not out at the moment that lets you, as a free action, discard as many cards as you want from your hand and redraw, because normally discarding all the cards from your hand is an action, and you must do it to all of them, and it takes one of your actions on your turn. So many different things you can do. You can choose to reveal your secret identity at a time if it would end the game. So there's a lot going on here. It's a game of sort of deduction, trying to figure out who's on your team, trying to figure out if one of your teammates is in last place, and therefore you don't want to help them because you're still trying to beat them, but you're also trying to make sure that they're not in last place, and perhaps the best way to do that is by moving up those tracks. And at the core of it, it's really a deck building game and area control game. So I know I didn't cover every single detail. I know I probably made a couple of tiny mistakes, but that is essentially a study in Emerald.
Wow. Well, I played this game 3 times, and I thought to myself, I should probably play it again. There's so much going on here. But then I realized I don't even think another play would really help me crystallize my thoughts that much, because this is such a unique game in a lot of ways. And right off the bat, I'm going to give this game props for that. The fact that Mr. Wallace has done such an amazing job of taking disparate concepts and a disparate theme and an overused theme and putting it in such a unique and new way that he just deserves kudos just for that. But let's go ahead and break it down from the beginning. So first off, the components of the game itself. Fantastic components, great looking artwork on everything, great looking artwork on the board, on the cards, nice heavy components, wood components. The card stock is really well. The box looks very attractive. It's done in his, I don't know if it's typical, but at least a couple other games of his I've seen have the same long, skinny box. Now, having said that, the game is very pricey, and I'm not really sure why. I mean, apparently Mr. Wallace would have you think that you're just paying for the quality of the game, and if you really like the game, then that's great, but really there's not a lot of components here enough to justify what I think has been between $80 and $90 for the game. I'm fortunate in that I'm actually borrowing this game for this review, but it's a very expensive game. I'm not sure if the components, even good as they are worth that much, but just do bear that in mind before I go any further. It's an expensive game, but it is very nice and attractive. They did a good job with all the presentation. The rulebook needs work. I found personally, with the people that I played, there were just some discrepancies. This is one of those games that I had to go on Board Game Geek's forums a lot to look up and reference issues that we were having. Some games I never have to do that. Some games, a couple of little things, sure I have to do that. This game we had to do it a lot, 3 or 4 different times. How exactly do the vampires work? How exactly do you assassinate someone? Do you assassinate someone? Does it have to be your main agent? Can it be your other agent? Do you have to use this card? I mean, all kinds of little quirks like that. And the rulebook did not explain them all very well at all. It really needs a redo. That's in my opinion. Also, there's only 2 player aids that came with the game. And sometimes, I can't really think off the top of my head of a specific instance, but they seem to contradict and sometimes have more information than the main rulebook. It's very odd. I think this game definitely could have used with this a player board or an individual player aid for every player in the game, because it goes up to 5 and there's only 2 sheets. So that's a minor thing, but the rulebook itself, though, is not a minor thing. I really think it needs a redo. But okay, let's get to the game itself. There's so much here. It's it's very odd. It's very hard for me to put my thoughts together on this. Maybe that's very thematic since it's like a Cthulhu game. But on the surface of it, it's area control or territory control, however you want to say that, with deck building, or it working hand in hand with deck building, and then your basic point maximization. That's just the surface of it. But the reality is you are using cards for different things on top of that, and you're trying to get control of cards not just on the board, but you're also getting control of cities, and you're trying to get control of cards that are off the board, the permanent effects cards, and you're trying to do this juggling act with the points, and there's different things you can do on the board that have nothing to do with deck building, like assassinating people and hiding people. There's just so much going on in this game, and in one way, it's very, very cool that you have all these different routes and avenues and things to keep track of, but on the other hand, it's pretty problematic that you have all these different things to keep track of and routes. I mean, it can be very overwhelming the first time you play, and that's why I said even after the first time I played, I was like, okay, let's try this again. And the second time I played, I understood it better, and I actually won the game. I was like, but I feel like I don't know that I earned that victory. I feel like I could have been doing something better, and I was trying to focus on one thing, and I should have been doing this, and it's just, there's a lot of different things to keep track of here, and it's difficult to tell whether or not you're doing really, really well, or you're even doing what you're supposed to do. And a lot of that has to do with one of the central tenets of this game, and sort of the central, unique, and I would definitely say weird thing about this game, and that is the team aspect. And just to go, if you didn't pay attention in the overview, there are two teams in the game, and it's random how the cards are distributed, and also according to the number of players. It's possible that you'll have a team of 3, a team of 2, 2 teams of 2 in a 4-player game. It's possible that one person will be on a team by themselves. That did not happen to us, but it is possible. And what ends up happening is you have to have, you're going for an individual victory. In other words, you want to have the most points. Maximize your points. Typical Euro game. No problem. But if you do have team members, if anyone in your team has the lowest amount of points when the end game is triggered, and the end game is triggered in a number of different ways, then your entire team loses. It doesn't matter if you were 100 points ahead of anyone else. You will lose if someone on your team is the dead last player. This is both, to me, interesting and very problematic. It's, maybe I need to, and in a way, like I said, I kind of praise Wallace for making me think outside the box on this, but I'm not very good at Euro games, in my opinion. Maybe others disagree, but I don't think I'm good at especially heavy Euro games. So I focus very, very, very heavily on what I'm doing because I want to get better, and I try to strategize as best I can. And in this game, it feels like a lot of that power is taken away from you because you can only do so much. And your teammates cannot just purposefully reveal themselves to help you out. So you have to, and nor would they even necessarily want to, because you only want your teammates to do so well. You don't want them to beat you. You just want them to do better than the other players. So it can be kind of frustrating because knowing the entire time that you could be doing this best you can, but you could still lose. And sure enough, that's what ended up happening in our third game, which is that I was primed to win, and then my teammate was dead last, and boom, there goes all my hopes and dreams. Now, again, that's very interesting to me, but it's also very frustrating, and I'm still not sure even to this point where I fall on that, but I can guarantee there are some people, I've read thoughts just that would confirm this, excuse me, that do not like that aspect of the game, and I can definitely understand why. It's very weird, and I feel like it's such an integral part of the game that you can't really divorce it from the game at this point, but that maybe it just needed to be handled in a different way. This also goes together with the assassinating royals or hiding them, and getting sort of fake points until the end of the game when you reveal yourself and determine whether they're real points or not, because you may not get the points if you're working for the wrong faction. If you kill a royal but you're actually a loyalist, you're not getting those points. Which could change everything. But the game is already over at that point. And it's kind of tough for me to even think why you would do that you could bluff out the other players, but then again, the game sort of lends itself to trying to get across the sentiment to your teammates right away that you're on their team so they don't screw you as badly. It's just a very complex little idea weaved into this game that I'm not totally sure about, other than to say again that it's just interesting. The rest of the game, I do really enjoy the card-driven gameplay of... I always enjoy it when you can use a card for multiple different things, but this game sort of takes it above and beyond that. You can use a card for the text, the action that the card lets you do. You can use the text or the card for bombs. You can use a card for cubes. You can use a card for coins, which are used to purchase cubes to put into your stock. If you use a card for cubes, you can either take them from the stock on Limbo back to your regular stock, or just move the cubes that you have in your stock out. So even one individual icon can be used for multiple things. It seems overwhelming at first, but I think it works really well, actually. I love deck building as a whole, so I enjoyed the deck building in this as well. It wasn't like it's heavy deck building, because there's a lot of things to do in this game, so you definitely have to buy cards, but at a certain point you might focus on assassination, and then you're not really deck building as much, but another player's path to victory might be getting the city cards as much as possible, because taking control of the city gets you points and it gets you the card, which is also very cool. And it doesn't just get you the card, like a card, it gets you the card, which means you could rip it away from another player. Again, pretty cool. Lots of really thematic elements to this. Even though this is sort of a heavy Euro game, it's a heavy Euro game with very thematic trappings to it, which is right up my alley. I really appreciate that. As far as some of the different things, I mean, moving around, the vampire thing, there's just a lot of other different unique elements depending on what cards come out. So the vampires could throw a wrench in the mix, but then again, I've seen people, including myself, get the vampire card and nothing major comes of it. It's just a waste of time. I've bought the Cthulhu card and nuked the city, but it didn't seem to help me very much. I just wanted to do it. But that's the thing. There's so many cool little things in this game, and none of the three games that we played were similar at all. Different things came up. The Necronomicon was a very important source of points in one game. In another game, it didn't really matter for that player at all. It just clogged up his deck. In another game, no one wanted to buy it. It sat out there for a very long time until Cthulhu nuked the city. So, what do I think about this game? I think this is a good, solid game that I may one day end up not liking at all, or it may end up being one of my favorite games. I just don't know. I don't know about that team mechanic, but I do know that the rest of the game is solid. There's a good, solid area control, deck building game here. I love deck building. I really love the theme. I'm not like a huge Cthulhu nut, even though I love Eldritch Horror, but I really love what he did with this theme here and with the short story from Neil Gaiman, which I should get around to reading one of these days. I think that Martin Wallace fans are going to be... What do I think? I think they'll love the mechanics, but if they're used to his more historical games, more realistic games, they may not love the theme or the team aspect at all. That team aspect is going to throw a lot of people, mark my words. But over and above that, again, like I said at the beginning, I really appreciate what he did with this game and how unique it is. I am eager to play it again, and that's definitely saying something. So, my name is Nick, this has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.